So the Rebbe asked the question: the Haftorah of that we read in Shavuot is supposed to be something like the topic of Shavuot. And what do we read about? We read about the angels, Ezekiel's vision of the angels. Ezekiel's vision of the angels, which is very, very detailed. We went over it yesterday, right, in a very short, a very short way. It's the beginning of the book of Ezekiel. So you can look and you can see yourself. So let's talk about these different types of angels and the faces of the angels and the wings of the angels, and they're flying and they're going and they're singing and there's talking and they're and then there's the angels that's called the Chayos, and the angels are called the Ophanim, and the angels are called the Seraphim, and all these different types of angels. So the Rebbe said, good. I mean, listen, Yechezkel was a very holy person. But what has this got to do with the holiday of Shavuot? The holiday of Shavuot, we received the Torah. I'm just making a repetition, sort of a summary of what we learned up to now. So, so what do we learn about the angels for? So he said, well, at Mount Sinai, there was a lot of angels. There's a sentence over there in Psalms that said there were all these angels, Alphai Shinon, it says different angels were there. It says, good, okay, but there were angels, but that was a secondary thing. The main thing of the Torah was that God revealed himself. He's the source of the angels. And not only that, we got the Torah is God's wisdom. And if you want to talk about angels already, so bring down the prophecy of Isaiah. It's like what, the 6th chapter of Isaiah, something. And there Isaiah says also he saw angels, and it doesn't go into such big detail. And Isaiah was a higher prophet than Ezekiel was. So Isaiah was much more, deep and accurate or whatever. He was like so why not bring that? And even better, bring the prophecy of Habakkuk. Habakkuk talks about over there, when they received the Torah, what was it, the Torah, giving the Torah? What's this thing about the angels, and especially in such big detail? And not only that, when you're talking about over here, you're talking about things that people don't even understand. The Torah was brought for understanding. Who understands what the angels are? And who cares? There's these types of angels, and they're burning up to God, and they're the seraphim, and they got wings, and they have this. I mean, people don't know what you're talking about. What are these angels? Where you go to the zoo, you see an angel over there. There's some place you can look at a telescope, you can see angels. Something. What are we talking about? What? So the Rebbe said that the reason is because to tell us that all of the details, it says that God created a world, and he created a very complicated world. And every detail of the world, as complicated as it is, and it's infinitely more complicated than you think, is created by God and for God. So that's what he says. The main intention of all these worlds was the visions, what's called the chariot, or the making of the worlds, how Yechezkel explains it, to reveal in the world how that all of the existence of every detail is only something to be similar, l'damot l'metziut aprat l'mayla. Everything in this physical world is created according to some spiritual pattern. And this spiritual pattern is also being created by God. Therefore, there was, by Yechezkel, was the revelation of this, what's called the upper chariot of God. The upper chariot of God means the upper, workings, inner workings of the upper worlds. Therefore, this was when at the Haftorah of the giving of the Torah. Because the giving of the Torah was given to the Jews to make sense of every detail in the world. And in order to do this, you have to realize that the upper worlds in some ways are more real than we are, and the upper worlds are infinitely nothing compared to the creator. And nevertheless, every detail is important to the creator. That's the idea of the Torah. When God gave the Torah, he showed how every detail of this world is important to God. Now we can understand this explains, and therefore we read the Haftorah of Yechezkel, which talks about every detail of the upper worlds. This also explains why is it that in this Haftorah is of Yechezkel, which is not understood to the majority of people. Ki af shepirte inyani merkava, even though the details of this upper chariot, which was explained in the Haftorah, they're not understood by normal people, right? By 99.99% of the big rabbis don't understand what's going on over here. And especially not the regular, normal, run-of-the-day Jews, but it is in the ability of every single Jew to add and understand the general idea of the Haftorah. There are upper worlds. The upper worlds are tremendously complicated. And from this amazing, complicated worlds, from every detail comes a detail of this physical world. That all the details of this upper worlds that Yechezkel saw, they are an appearance, something like, and by means of them, Yechezkel was able to understand God himself. So it says that on one end, every detail of this world has a spiritual source, and from this spiritual source, you can come to recognize God. According to this, now we can understand the reason that we finish with the pasuk Tisa'eni Ruach. Remember, we did this yesterday. That the whole thing is the first chapter of Ezekiel, and all of a sudden it jumps to the end of the third chapter of Ezekiel. See, the end of not the end, a sentence in the middle. I'm sorry, the middle of the third chapter of Ezekiel. The whole thing is the entire first chapter of Ezekiel. That's what we read. But it's tacked on to the end, one sentence from the middle of the third. What is that one sentence? It says, "But tisa'eni ruach, a spirit lifted me up." Let me just, I'll read this to you. What it is here. 1 second. 1 second. Here it is. It says, "Vatisa'eni ruach, a spirit lifted me up." It's this 12th sentence in the third chapter. Jumps all of a sudden over to the third chapter. A spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me the sound of a tremendous noise saying, "Baruch kavod Hashem mimakomo." Blessed is the glory of God from its place, from his place. Right? So he's talking about all these angels and all they're all flying and all this and they're going on, and they reached this level of the heaven, and I saw some sort of a flashing, brilliant light that was flashing and etc. And there was the appearance of God was appearing, and I saw, and I fell on my face, and I heard a voice, and then all of a sudden it jumps to this sentence in the middle of the third chapter, and it says, "And a spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me a tremendously loud voice saying, 'Blessed is the glory of God from his place.'" Okay. Now we can understand why we tack this thing on. Why? And that we jump over one whole entire 1.5 chapters, even though that it's not written by the Merkava. It's not written in this first chapter that talks about the upper formations of God. But why do we jump? We skip all this. Even more, a simple meaning is that it's talking about when God went away after he spoke to Yechezkel. Now, interesting thing is that Yechezkel got this vision outside of Israel, and usually visions of God are not outside of Israel. That was the reason why Jonah, he ran away, because he didn't want to get prophecy. But the reason why that Ezekiel got prophecy outside of Israel, because he was together with when in Babylon, when they took him all to Babylon, was because this is Gala Shechina, the Bava Shechina Imam, that God's presence went to Babylon with them. So God's presence was there. God's presence was there with them. It says, yeah. That's how it starts off. I was in the middle of the exile on the mount, on this river. What's it called? The river of what? Nahar Kabar. How all of a sudden the heavens open up and I saw this vision. Okay. So it says after the vision of Ezekiel was finished. So by the way, what it means a vision? Most of the prophets, except for Moses, that they would like sort of fall unconscious and they would speak. They would speak. So this seems to be that after he had his vision and he talked about what he talked about or what he remembered, what he saw, says after that is God's glory went away from him and suddenly he heard this scent. It says Teise Ruach, that the lifted, Tise'eni Ruach, the spirit here says it went away from me, not like I translated that it lifted me up. And I heard behind me this big voice. This is stressed the main novelty of what Yechezkel is. What Yechezkel is saying, what's he saying? One of the differences between the vision of Isaiah and the vision of Ezekiel is that in the chariot of Ezekiel is talking about these angels, which are called Chayot and Ophanim. And in the vision of Yeshaya, he only talked about the angels which is called Seraphim. Okay, there's different explanations of what these angels are, by the way. I saw one place it says, the Rambam says differently, and the Arizal says different, but nevertheless it says here, the Ophanim and Chayot, these angels which are called wheels, and other angels which are called animals, they're further away. They serve God with a big noise. Like it's known that this big noise that they serve, this comes from the Ophanim, from these angels which are called wheels. Like it says in the Merkava, in the Brachas Kriya Shema, we say Ophanim b'chayos HaKodesh, B'rash Gadol. We say in the blessing right before we say Shema Yisrael in the morning. There's two blessings before. We'll talk about the angels in the first one. And it says the Ophanim and the Chayos, they make a big noise. Misnasim le'umas Seraphim. They elevate themselves up to higher level of angels, which are called the Seraphim, the burning angels. And the Umatam Meshabchim Bruch Kavod Hashem Makomo, which is not the case. The service of the Seraphim is not in a big noise. They don't make a big noise. Why don't the angels that are called the Seraphim make a lot of noise? What's the big difference? The reason it's explained that the difference between the Seraphim, the burning up angels, and these angels was called wheels, and the others called the animals. This is like the difference between a person who lives in the city that sees the king, and a person that lives in a town that he sees the king. It says that Isaiah was like a person that lives in the city. He's like more civilized. The person that's more like the sophisticated. He sees the king, and by him, it's not such a big thing, right? It's not such a big surprise, let's say. It's not such a big surprise. The person that's in the city, he sees the king, he's tremendously impressed. But he can think about the king a little bit. He can look at I see the king has a different type of a hat today than he had the last time. This time he's wearing the golden braid and right. The person that lives in the town, in the village, he's less sophisticated. He sees the king. The king. Wow, did you notice how the king has a different sword? I didn't notice anything. I just saw the king was there. It says the big noise comes from the big novelty. The novelty. Ooh, he sees the king. And therefore, ben kfar. This was only by the villager that sees the king. When the villager sees the king, his greatness causes by him a rush, a noise. Uy! Because of the surprise of the thing, which is not the case b'ben krach, which is not the case the city dweller. He is more sophisticated. He sees the king regularly. It's not such a big novelty in his eyes. Ein etzel lo rash, there's no big noise. Similar is also the difference between the Seraphim and the Ophanim. In general, like I said, we skipped that in the class, but so that's the big difference between Isaiah. His prophecy was much higher. He's called like a Ben Krach. He's called like a sophisticated city dweller. And Yechezkel, he was like a villager. He was from far away. So it says the same difference between the Seraphim and the Ophanim. The Seraphim, they're higher angels. The Seraphim, that was spoken about by Isaiah, Yeshaya. That's how we know that his prophecy was higher. And the Ophanim makes more noise. That's lower level of realizing God in more detail. Hasrafim, these angels, which are called burning up angels, they understand how God is holy and how God is separate from the worlds. And the worlds don't even take up any place. But the Ophanim, they're like villagers. They understand how God creates everything from nothing to something. Metziut Olam, the whole world is brand new every moment. It's incomparable to God. Mishum Zeh, therefore, their excitement is much greater because they're Masigim, Masigim, they understand the truth. How is the opposite, Me'anira Le'enayim, what's different, what the eyes see. A city dweller that sees the king, he's like, he's comparable to the king. The king is much greater than I am. The king is smarter than I am. He's more powerful than I am. But he's not so excited about the king. Not excited. Which is not the case the Ophanim. The Ophanim, they see the king, they realize, wait, there's a king. They see the king, they realize that the king is incomparable to me. In this case, we're talking about the king, we're talking about God. So God is not just incomparable spiritually to me. That God is real and I'm not real. And the world is exactly the opposite of what I thought before I saw the king. That's the lower angels, that the world seems to be something, they think that the world is something real. And really, the world is not existing at all. It's like the villager. The villager, he thinks that his big reality is like, cows or, the crops come in or something. And suddenly he comes, he sees the king. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that my whole crops and my cows and everything, that comes from the king. This is the king. The person that lives in the city, though, he just realizes the king is a great leader and he's a great, wonderful person. Therefore, the angels, which are called the Ophanim, they are in a big noise. Just like a person that understands something brand new that's opposite what he thought in the first place. In the first place. So he says, therefore, one second. The prophecy of Ezekiel was lower, but on the other hand, it was more enthusiastic. It was more of a surprise. That's the whole big novelty of the giving of the Torah. When the Torah was given, then everyone felt like a villager. Suddenly they realized that not just that God is greater than us, God is infinitely greater. They realized that God is real and this world is not real. That the whole existence of the world and the whole world is nikar and misis mi'etzo, that we see that from the world, it's not real. That every detail in this world is a big miracle. It's a big miracle. If the world is not real, why is it here? It's here because God is creating it. So you can feel that in every detail of the world, you can feel the miracle of every detail. You can see godliness in everything. And that's the whole idea of getting excited about God. And that's Yechezkel, that he talked about the angels that are excited about God because they're so far away. And that's really the point of the giving of the Torah. Namely, not just what it says in the Torah, but the godliness of the Torah. According to this, now we can explain also that in Mount Sinai, there were all these thunders and lightnings and the big shofar that was strong, and all the people were shaking. If we explain simply that the intention was to scare the Jews, to make them, give proper honor to God, Jewish people. Hari Lichor, first of all, the Gili Kavod Hashem, the fact that God revealed himself, you saw, like it says, that from God was speaking to you, that was enough. What did you have to have trumpets and thunders and lightning and things like that before God came. And the lightnings and the thunders are incomparable to God. That God appeared on Mount Sinai, everybody felt they were nothing. Their souls jumped out of their bodies. That was enough. What do you have to have? No, you have to have lightning and thunder beforehand in order to impress the people. What do you have to impress them? You have God himself. It would have been enough just the fact that God appeared to them. That would have caused this big fear, etc. Even more, the fear and the trepidation that came from the thunders and the lightning, and this is a little bit understandable. This is more relevant to the body. But the fear that came at Mount Sinai when God revealed himself, when God spoke to the Jews, it says face to face, this is much deeper in the soul, right? They heard thunder and lightning. They could have said, thunder and lightning, oh, God knows how to make thunder and lightning. That's really something. I never heard thunder and lightning that before, right? And someone could say, what are you talking about? There was thunder. It was almost the same thing. Thunder, remember that storm that was, that's nothing like this. But it still is a little bit relevant to the world, the thunder and lightning. Why did God make thunder and lightning before he gave the Torah? It's sort of like anticlimactic. The cartoon before the main feature. Well, what did God need that for on Mount Sinai? But nevertheless, there were. God wanted there to be thunders and lightning. Why? Somehow or other, this is an essential thing in Mount Sinai. But this is the same thing we're talking about here. That the whole thing of all these rash, the thunders at Mount Sinai, and the kolot and the rush, the thunders and the earthquakes, whatever it was, and all the people were afraid. It says Eretz Rasha, the world was shaking. That's what it says in Psalms. This is not just because of what they heard in their ears. Shahaya Prat Nosef, it was just another preparation for the giving of the Torah. But the thunders and the lightning that were there, this has a special spiritual purpose. It shook their souls. Why? Because of the novelty of the giving of the Torah. In every detail of the creation, the call of Bria and the whole creation could see the true existence of the Creator. This is not just what was seen physical eyes. This is a thing which is it's a thing on itself, but the source comes from the true existence of God. Thunders, lightning, these were not natural thunders and lightning. This was thunders and lightning, which was thunder, and it was lightning, and it was a big noise, but everybody felt it was godly. That even the thunders and the lightning, these details also come from God. In other words, it's not that God appeared on Mount Sinai and that's it, and he went away. No, that even the world was testifying. And the thunders, the lightnings. Torah comes from teaching. How much more so when we're talking about the day of the year when the Torah was given to the Jewish people? That these days are, when we mention them, that's really what's happening. That every single Jew has to learn a big teaching from reading the Torah and the Haftorah of the holiday of Shavuot. And what we said before, this is the teaching of two details. Serving God himself and dealing with others. Even though regarding Apanogea Lamaisa Merkava, even though in regarding whole spiritual configurations of angels and worlds, it says, Ein Dorshin, you're not supposed to learn these secrets. A normal person is not supposed to learn them unless a person is wise and understands, etc. And this is what in the Meiser Merkava. This is talking about when you learn about the angels and upper spiritual worlds. That could be a little bit dangerous, as it's written in the written Torah and in the oral Torah. And this is written, what's called the secrets of the Torah, the details, the explanations of this vision of Ezikiel. And it's called the Sefer D'Tzinuto. It's one of the parts of the Zohar. But when it's talking about those secrets you're not supposed to learn, unless you're really wise. Kabbalah, you learn Kabbalah. But according to the way it's revealed by the Arizal, and it's explained by the Arizal And Arizal, which was only 400 years ago, said, now it's a time to reveal this wisdom. So each and every person is obligated to learn something about the upper worlds. And especially after even more time, when came the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidut. And especially after that it was explained the ideas of understanding by the Rebbes of Chabad as a mitzvah Rama, the da et Elokei Avicha. You have to know God, and that will bring you to a complete heart. The more that you understand God, the better. Now, if you just think that God is just, it's just one of the players, one of the characters of the Bible, and that when you die, it's going to happen once in a while. God sticks his nose into the world, so that's one thing of God. But you're not going to have a complete heart. Your heart is always going to be connected to yourself. But as soon as you realize that God is creating every detail of the world, and it's not an easy thing to incorporate in your personality, your day-to-day. But once you realize that these secrets of the Torah are part of your day-to-day life, this is your car that you get into and the food that you eat and the people that you deal with, and that every single detail is important to God. By means of this, you come to see and recognize in everything in the world that its true existence comes from the true existence of God. And that's what Moshiach is going to reveal, how precious and miraculous this physical world is. Similarly, we can also understand in dealing with other people that you won't just keep the Torah to yourself. You'll spread out Torah and the commandments in Judaism to every Jew you can. In order to do this, you have to do it from a kol rash gadol, to make a big noise about it, to make a big, the enthusiasm, like the thunders and lightning, even more. When a service of a person is, you keep it inside of yourself, in your own, like your own little area of Torah and holiness, then sometimes it's enough, which is what's called a kol damama daka. It says that Elijah the prophet, he was up on the mountain, and he heard a small little voice of God. That's a voice to him. But when you want to go out from who you are, you want to advertise the Torah, which that's what God did in Mount Sinai. Then call Hamona Shalromai, and you want to compete with the tremendous noise of Rome. It says that Rebbe Akiva was walking with three other rabbis, and they heard the festivities going on in Rome, right? And his friends, they wept, and Rabbi Akiva laughed. And he said, "Why are you weeping?" They said, "We're weeping because these people are happy, and we're miserable. We Jewish people are miserable. Look at these lowlifes, and they're happy, and the Jewish people, they're the sons of God. We're miserable." He said, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "I'm laughing because the prophecy said that one day, the same prophecy that said that the temple will be destroyed, that same prophecy says that one day it's going to be rebuilt and we'll be even happier than them. So if we want to compete with the big noise of Rome and the festivities going on, so in order to negate the big noise of the rave parties or whatever it is of Rome, we have to make also a kol gadol. We have to make a big noise of holiness, like was on Mount Sinai. That by means of this, we can quickly come to hear the big shofar gadol. A big shofar will sound, a shofar which is in the future, a kol mavasar omer, a big voice of God, which will announce and say, the geula, there'll be a redemption quickly now. So in short, why do we learn about the angels? To let us know that every detail, first of all, to let us know that every detail in this world corresponds to some detail in the upper worlds, and that every detail in the upper worlds is created purposely by the Creator. And the reason He creates it is in order that we should come closer to Him. And the way we come closer to Him is appreciating a little bit the upper worlds. That takes us out of ourselves, and then we can realize there's a Creator to the upper worlds and all as well. And this is a thing which is relevant to every Jew. We read it in the Haftorah for every Jew, even the most simple Jew, that we have to deal and realize that there's spiritual upper worlds and that they're only there in order to help us serve God better. And, says the Rebbe, in addition, we have to advertise this to others. That's why on Mount Sinai were thunders and lightning. We have to go out of ourselves and tell others about the essence of what was revealed. The essence was not the thunder and the lightning, but the thunder and the lightning prepared everyone for the essence, which was the essence reveal of God, revelation of God. And that's what's going to bring godliness, a realization of the creator in every detail of the creation, just like in Ezekiel was every detail of the spiritual creation. We'll see this also in every detail of the physical creation with receiving the Torah in a happy way now. Now let's learn the okay.